Intertemporal choice. In some sense, it is an application of consumer behavior or classical demand theory that we have studied. So it's an application of classical demand theory, by which we mean that here we will have ICs, here we will have budget line, and here we will have some prices also. Now, so I've said that there are two periods. So let us first deal with the notations. So periods 1 and 2. So bundles consists of composite good, composite consumption good. Okay. So for them, C1, C2. Then comes these goods prices, which are P1 and P2. Now, to add a bit of complexity, you may write P2 as P1 into 1 plus pi, where pi is the inflation rate. Okay, you will see that I have not done so in the notes, just to leave out a little bit of complexity. If you introduce this, the results will involve R and pi, and you will see less of P2 here. Okay. Now, apart from that, you must need income. So they are M1 and M2. In other books, if you look at, you may see instead of M1 and M2, you may see Y1 and Y2 also. So we write M1 or M2 or Y1 or Y2, whatever is suitable. Okay, now here we will deal with M1 and M2. Last and the most important is the rate of interest. We know from our study of Fisher's theory of investment that rate of interest is the reward of being patient. That is, if you save some money today, do not consume it, and you are deciding to consume it in future periods, you are waiting, and as a reward to your waiting or your patience, I am giving you a rate of interest. In other words, while you save money, if I am not giving you any return at all. Okay. All right. So this is the gain or the opportunity cost. Is the same way we have interpreted R in investment. Now it is interpreted in context of savings. Okay. So these are our notations. Now, after notations, what we need is assumptions. Okay. So there are a few assumptions which basically provides the setup. And they are like this. First of all, to be at par with classical demand theory, P1, P2, R are all given. Now this R is given. It's the same thing as saying that there is a perfect lending market. If there is perfect lending market, then R will be given. Okay. Okay. Now about the periods, we have considered two periods. So obviously, if you are talking about saving for the future, then you can save only in period 1. Remember, in consumer behavior, we had an assumption which said that there can be no savings. Now here also, we have to take an assumption which is sort of parallel to that. So that assumption is that given you can save in period 1, in period 2, spend everything. Instead of saying this, at times, instead of saying this, we say that the individual lives for 2 periods, Or in terms of macro, if you say that there is no idea of bequest. Okay. So single individual comes in, lives for 2 period, has an option of saving in period 1, but if you save, you're going to spend everything anyways in period 2, or as a variant of assumption 2, if you dissave, or in a more positive sense, if you borrow, then you have to pay it back in period 2. So you have to pay it back in period 2. And in these within these two options comes the rate of interest. Okay. So if you save, you earn a rate of interest R over your savings. And if you borrow, then you have to pay the money with an interest payment at an interest rate R. So that is our setup. Now, before going to the standard Lagrangian and all, or optimality, so to say, we are going to say the most important part of intertemporal choice, something that when we study intertemporal choice, always tend to forget. And that part is that there is always a choice. There is always a choice available. And that choice is, in language we say, neither a borrower nor a lender be. What that means is that no borrowing and no lending. So this is a choice that you always have. Okay. And this choice, by this word, we are actually saying that this is an equilibrium. So what we are saying is that even before all of this optimization with IC and budget line, a consumer in intertemporal choice always has an equilibrium, and that equilibrium is no borrowing, no lending. Okay. This is a very important difference with whatever we have done in classical demand theory, and that is going to change how we draw our diagram when rate of interest changes. Okay. So how are we going to say this equilibrium is? So I've said that no borrowing, no lending. That means the consumer is spending all that is available in all income in period 1, and that is M1, and consuming C1 with a price of P1, and spending M2 in period 2, and consuming C2 with a price of P2. So that means these equilibriums are M1 by P1 and C2 star is M2 by P2. Okay. So this point M1 by P1 and M2 by P2, this point is always available to him. Okay. Now, obviously, there is nothing much to explore here. So we will go on to the other case where we will assume while constructing this model that the individual is saving. You can always construct assuming that the individual is borrowing. The mathematics is not going to change. Apart from that, then we will write that savings is negative. But here we will say that savings is positive, because a negative savings is basically borrowing. So to just mention, S less than 0 implies borrowing. Okay. Okay. So when someone is lending, that means that individual is not going to the full extent of consumption in period 1. So that means that person C1 will be less than M1 by P1. This is for a lender. And if a person is borrowing, then that means he is going an extra mile. So for him, C1 will be greater than M1 by P1. So here you are remaining within your pocket and saving something. So S positive, and here you are consuming out of your pocket. So S negative. Okay. Now let us construct the budget line. So budget line. As we have said that we are going to assume that this person of whom I am going to construct the budget line is saving in the first period. So if there is saving in the first period, then that S will be equal to M1 minus P1 into C1, right? Expenditure and income. So gap is savings. All right. Now, in the second period, you have to spend everything. So in the second period, your expenditure must equal your income. So what is your income? Your first income is obviously the second period's income, M2. And apart from that, you have some savings. So that savings will come with interest return. So that is your second period's equation of income and expenditure. So what will you do now? We'll just put this value of S here. Okay. So if I put the value of S here, it basically becomes P2 C2 equal to M2 plus, let's put it here, M1 minus P1 C1 into 1 plus R. Okay. If we adjust things a bit, take expenditure on one side and income on the other side, it becomes P1 into 1 plus R, C1 plus P2 C2 equal to M1 into 1 plus R plus M2. Okay. So now, what is P1 into 1 plus R? It is if I have to consume C1 in future, in period 2. And what is M1 into 1 plus R? It is if I save entire M1, then I will get this income in second period. So that means if I take the consumption bundle, okay, and its associated expenditure, this budget line shows his income expenditure balance in terms of period 2. So this is period 2 budget line. So this one we will call this is called future value budget line. Future value budget line. Now divide all throughout by 1 plus R, then it becomes this. And this is very known to us. We have worked a lot with this kind of things. And this is called present value budget line. Present value, a term which is quite familiar in investment. So this is our present value budget line. So looking at the fact that if I have, what does this tell? It tells us that if I have my entire income in first period, okay, nothing in second period, and then if I calculate what amount of consumption I'm going to achieve with that income in the first period, then this is the consumption expenditure. Okay. So income in terms of first period, consumption in terms of first period. That's why we are saying present value budget line. And like in calculation of any present value, we are dividing it by 1 plus R. Here, just the opposite thing. So we are saying it future value budget line. Okay. All right. Now we are going to draw the diagram of the budget line. Okay. And as I said that the equilibrium of M1 by P1 comma M2 by P2 is always there. So we already know one point in our budget line. Okay. So before saying what will be the value of maximum consumption, first we want to write this M1 by P1 here and M2 by P2 here. So we know that this is an equilibrium. So our budget line must go through here. So let's draw the budget line. Okay, so here is our point, which is always an equilibrium. Okay, try to understand this without even drawing IC. All right, we know that this is always there. Okay, so now what are the maximum consumptions? We very well know this. If I put C1 equal to 0, I find C2 maximum, right? So C1 equal to 0 will give us C2 maximum, and C2 equal to 0 will give us C1 maximum. The simple mathematical caricature. Okay. Now, so what will be C2? So now before going to C2, we'll just bring in another notation. We'll say that total wealth is equal to M1 into 1 plus R plus M2. Okay, so this is my total income. Now, if I divide it by P1 into 1 plus R, okay, I will get M1 by P1 plus M2 by P1 into 1 plus R. Okay. So what is this? This is the present value of the real endowment. Why suddenly we are interested in this equation? It is because, you see, this point shows us a real endowment of C1 and C2, right? And since it's the same budget line, at this point, the endowment, the real endowment, the amount of consumption that I can achieve must be equal to this and this in terms of real value. Okay, so this is my total wealth. I'm dividing it by the price, so I'm getting the real endowment or the real amount of consumption that my wealth can bring to me. All right, so here at this extreme we have WR by P1 into 1 plus R, right? We know that this gives us the present value. So what about the future value? The future value will be simply WR by P2. Okay, so now you can easily find that putting, as I said, C1 or C2 0, right? What I'm just trying to say is it's a different interpretation of this fact, all right? That I'm on the same budget line and the same budget must bring in the same endowment everywhere. To just look into the time aspect, what we are saying is that here I have the present value and here I have the future value, and both of them bring the same amount of consumption as this point. Okay, let's just for our convenience denote it by A. Now, since we have our budget line, the next easy step is to find the slope. So what is DC2, DC1? Okay, it will be minus P1 1 plus R by P2. Simple differentiation will give you the result. And obviously, since while measuring the slope, we have to bring in the prices at the same time frame. Since I have here P2, I have here P1 into 1 plus R, because this exchange, taking consumption out of first period and taking into second period, all of these exchange, it involves a time value, and that time value is expressed by this rate of interest. So that's why instead of the normal minus P1 by P2, right, if I compare with classical demand, what we have, we generally have minus P1 by P2. So instead of having this minus P1 by P2, here I have minus P1 into 1 plus R. Why this component? Because of the time factor. As I said, that interest rate is basically it represents the time factor. All right. Okay, so now we will move into a very special case of this, and then IC and all. So let's look at our special case. So what is our special case? We are considering a situation where interest rate is 0 and no borrowing. This quite conveniently gives us a variant of the budget line that you can have here. Okay, it's essentially half of a problem. Okay, so R equal to 0, that means there is no 1 plus R component. Okay, so instead of writing M1 by P1 into 1 plus R, we will just simply write, instead of writing, so M1 by P1, M1 by P1 plus M2 by P1 into 1 plus R. Instead of writing this, we will have no R. So okay, let's erase it. Let's directly go to the budget line. So when there is no borrowing, the first point that we must notice is that in drawing the budget line, okay, first we characterize these 2 points, right? M1 by P1 and M2 by P2. Remember this, always when you draw any diagram of intertemporal choice, you must first locate this point because it is always there. So no borrowing. That means consumption C1 cannot go beyond this, right? So the budget line, there is no budget line like this. There is no portion like this because C1 cannot extend beyond M1 by P1. Okay, so here's this part. But here, saving is allowed, right? Whenever you have a question which says you are not allowed to do something, try to think what you are allowed to do. So you are not allowed to do borrowing, but you are obviously allowed to do saving. Yes, there is no incentive, right? Because R is 0. So you will not get anything by saving the extra money. But yes, always you can save. So if you save and this option is there, this upper portion of this budget line will remain intact. But there is one check. The check is this. Now you are not going to get any interest rate. So what I'm trying to say is that now if you write P2C2, which will be equal to M2, it will be simply, you have to write plus S, right? So there will be nothing like 1 plus R. Okay. All right. So if I put in place of S, I have to put the expression. What is that? That was M1 minus P1, sorry, M1 minus P1 C1, right? And now if I think of the extremes, okay, now if I adjust, I'll get this point as M1 by P1 plus M2 by P2. So if this extreme point shows that if C1 is 0, if I take entire M1 money in the futures period, it will become M1 by P1. The real endowment will become M1 by P1 plus M2 by P2, obviously because there is no interest. Okay. So let's move into IC now. Okay. So this will be our budget line, right? Under this special case, since there is no borrowing, C1 will end at this point. But since you can save at your own wish, the budget line will extend on the upper side. Okay. So now let's bring in the IC and see the utility maximizing point. Okay. So IC. Obviously, IC will be U equal to U of C1 comma C2. Okay. You can have any shape, like you can have our perfect substitutes, you can have our L-shaped, you can have Cobb-Douglas, anything. One difference is that here we call the negative of the slope as MRTP. Okay, it's not, it's the equivalent of MRS. So generally the negative of the slope is called MRS, but here it is called MRTP. Okay, all right. Why the difference? Because this here shows your preference towards consuming less in period 1 and moving some consumption in period 2. Okay, now for the time being we will assume, obviously in while drawing the diagram, we will assume convex downward ICs, that is the usual ICs. Okay, so the task that we are now engaged with is the utility maximization, which we have done so many times. But here, as we said, that there are always two options. The two options are the consumer at optimal can be a lender or a borrower. Now, as I repeatedly said, the first trick of drawing the diagram is decide what you are going to draw, a borrower or a lender. And start with M1 by P1 and M2 by P2. So, okay. So on the left side, I'm going to draw a lender. So lender means, if I draw this budget line, then lender means C1 will be behind M1 by P1, right? C1 will be less than M1 by P1. So let's take M1 by P1 here at this point, so that we do not have any problem in drawing a lender's diagram. Okay, I'm saying it again. Since for a lender, C1 is less than M1 by P1, we are taking M1 by P1 close to the extreme point. Okay, now we know that our C1 star will be here and our C2 star will be here. So we now have our diagram. And just to tell you the trick, at last we'll draw the IC. Okay, so the equilibrium of a lender, and I have successfully shown it because C1 star is M1 by P1. The opposite trick goes for the borrower. So here we are going to draw a borrower. Okay, so how I will draw the borrower? Simple. For a borrower, C1 star will be greater than M1 by P1. So now when I'm drawing the budget line, I will take M1 by P1 a bit inside, close to 0. So here my M1 by P1 and here is M2 by P2. Now we can take C1 here, C1 star, and readily I have got C2 star here. Okay, and then I will draw the IC. And then we will draw the IC. EL, EB. Okay, so let me just tell you the trick again. I'm going to draw a lender that is decided, so I know this is true, and because this is true, I'm drawing M1 by P1 close to the maximum point. Here, just for the opposite reason, just for the analogous reason, I'm taking M1 by P1 a bit close to 0. Okay. And just by doing this trick, I'm drawing a perfect diagram. All right. So as in classical demand theory, here also the optimality occurs at tangent. So MRTP equal to P1 into 1 plus R by P2. So this is quite similar to what we have in general in consumer behavior, MRS equal to P1 by P2, right? Here we have an extra R because we have a time component, and here we have TP because here is a preference of taking consumption from one period to another. Okay. Now, the next task is obviously of comparative statics, which we will do in the next session. We will increase R and we will see what happens with a lender and with a borrower.